Hejsan allihopa! Välkomna tillbaka efter lunchen. Jättekul att se att så många har hittat hit alla trapporna ner. Hoppas inte allt för många ska springa fram och tillbaka, eller så är det bra för era steg för dagen. Vi kommer ha en mängd spännande gäster här nu under eftermiddagen, både från PwC och externa gäster och paneldeltagare. Och som vi nämndes i förmiddag, som det var några av er som kanske inte var där, så som tack till alla dessa externa deltagare så skänker vi en summa till Svenska bussarna. Vi vill också påminna om Slido som vi kan använda även här för att fånga in frågor. Och det kommer finnas vissa sådana här Q&As och polls i några av passen. Och då får ni logga in på det event som heter hashtag PwC1. Så använder ni Slido förut så är det in i ett annat event. Skriva in en annan kod som gäller. Och det ska synas där, precis. Toppen! Med det sagt så är det hög tid att komma igång med det här passet. Det ska handla om ESG Due Diligence. Och det är David Ringmar, ledare för PwCs affärsområde Sustainability, som kommer att prata om vad det är och hur det kan öka företags affärsvärde. Välkommen upp på scen.
Tack så mycket. Väldigt kul att se er alla här, att ni hittade ner till den här salen också. Jag var lite orolig här för 3-4 minuter sedan. Då var det 5-6 personer här. Men jättekul att ni har kommit hit. Nu ska vi prata om det spännande temat ESG DD eller Due Diligence. Vi har ju på PwC sett en otrolig ökning av den här tjänsten i vår portfölj. Vi gör ungefär 250 transaktioner, rådgivning i 250 transaktioner per år. Och jag skulle säga att liksom från att göra enstaka miljö-DDs, som egentligen kanske inte vi är bäst skickade att göra, till att göra en ESG-DD där man försöker hålla ihop konceptet kring alla externaliteter som man egentligen inte kan baka in helt tydligt i sin modell när man gör en DD-process, har ökat markant. Och det är väl kanske inte så konstigt med tanke på hur världen utvecklas och den reglering som kommer på massa olika sätt, det vill säga samhällets önskemål från oss, hur vi vill prestera, hur vi vill rapportera, hur vi vill agera som företagare. Men det som är väldigt tydligt är att man kan ju integrera det här i en hel så att säga, investeringscykel. Om man tittar på liksom de saker som man gör inför en investering, så är det förstås att, men vad är det för så samhällsutmaning jag vill adressera? Att man har en tydlig plan för det, en tydlig idé kring det. Och sen förstås i DD-fasen så screenar man det. Och sen att man har en idé om hur man sen under sin holdingperiod jobbar med de här frågorna väldigt tydligt. På olika sätt, på ett hållbart sätt, på ett mätbart sätt. Med olika tools, verktyg. Interagera med sina intressenter. Och sen förbereder sig för en exitfas, beskriver vad man har gjort, helst kunna ha en bra mätserie som man visar på någon positiv trend. Då ser vi så många exempel på värdeskapande. Det är klart, det är väldigt branschspecifikt, absolut. Men det finns fler och fler sådana väldigt tydliga exempel. Så är det värdefullt att jobba med ESG i investeringsprocesser? Ja, det är det. Och det är inte så konstigt kanske. Om man säger att stora företag i energibranschen vill jobba med fossilfrihet. Det är ett ESG-tema där man kan precis interagera. Där liksom det är en mognad, det finns prispunkter. Man kan bestämma sig för hur man vinner. Det blir precis som vilken affärsstrategi som helst. Och fler sådana områden tycker jag man kan se. Vi har ett ramverk på PwC. Som man kan säga, nu när vi har jobbat med det här så att vi har gjort 60, 70, 80 sådana här ESG-DD de senaste 2 åren, så är det här som efterfrågas. Och det jag uppfattar att det här är ganska mycket en simulering av den CSRD-information som inte finns idag. Det är så att sen, när CSRD är framme, det är reviderat, det blir mer och mer moget, då kommer den här informationen finnas, precis som finansiell information finns idag. Men idag finns den inte riktigt. Och då kan man på olika sätt simulera det här. Det vill säga att det handlar om materialiteten. Vad är materiellt? Hur hanterar man det utifrån ett riskperspektiv? Precis som dubbelmaterialitetsanalys är i CSRD. Hur förhåller man sig till sina peers? Det vill säga vanlig konkurrensbevakning fast i de här ESG-parametrarna. För att om du är företagare och vill så att säga, sticka ut, vara lite bättre än alla andra, då är det klart, då är det den relativa positionen som blir viktig. Och sen förstås, hur kan man använda sig av allt det här arbetet i ett värdeskapande perspektiv? Det vill säga skapa en premiumprodukt, driva topline, minska kapitalkostnader, minska risker. Det finns massa sätt att få värde av det här. Förbättra dina relationer till dina intressenter och så vidare. Så att det kan skapa en värdeskapande plan. Så att i en DD-fas, att jobba med de här inför en investering, beroende lite på vilken bransch man är så kan man fokusera på olika saker. Har ett jättestort värde, upplever vi, och efterfrågas. Vi har gjort en studie nyligen där vi har frågat en massa investerare vad är de topp 3 anledningarna till varför man använder sig av ESG-DD som verktyg. Och det är ju som ni ser, det är absolut flest som säger att det är för värdeskapandet. Och det är en procentsats som också ökar. Där man också kan se är ju att regleringar, anledningen till att man vill vara mer och mer compliant, kanske inte så konstigt med alla bokstavsförkortningar som kommer, är en väldigt starkt ökande drivkraft också. Men också, tycker jag, är glädjande nog att se att inför en exit, det vill säga att hur jag kan beskriva det här, vad har jag gjort med mitt företag i min ägandefas, att man också i en exitfas tycker att det här är viktigt. Så en tredjedel tycker att det här är jätteviktigt. Och det är väl liksom den utvecklingen man ser. Ja, det är värdeskapande. Ibland lite svårt att sätta siffror på det. Mer regleringscompliance, för det kommer jättemycket reglering. Jag är ganska imponerad av EU faktiskt. Av hur ambitiöst det här är. Och vad de vill att vi ska åstadkomma. Det är jättemycket. Men också då, jag ser och mer hur jag kommersiellt kan få nytta av det här i min exit. Har det här haft någon påverkan i din beslutsprocess då, i dina investeringar? Ja, varannan säger att det har minst under en affär under det senaste året så har man tackat nej till affären. För att det inte har rimmat med det som man vill stå för. Och att man har avbrutit affären helt enkelt. Det är rätt många som säger också att det har påverkat så att säga, den förhandlingen eller det avtal. Det vill säga att det har en legal konsekvens av att ha screenat företaget i DSG. Och det är ganska få som säger att det direkt har haft en påverkan på köpeskillingen än. Så det har ju mer av en showstopper-funktion än så länge. Eller alternativt någon slags riskperspektiv. Men det finns ändå ett antal som säger att nej, men det påverkar värderingen. När vi sen frågade dem hur beskriver ni det här då? Så är det väldigt många som beskriver det här kvalitativt. Det vill säga bristen på information, datainformation är fortfarande ganska stor. Men det är ändå ett antal som säger att det här påverkar hur jag beskriver mina intäkter, kostnader och så vidare. Men i en relativt liten del än så länge. Men det är så att säga, det har ett värde. Jag kan ibland sätta prispunkter på det. Ungefär där jag uppfattar att vi befinner oss. Och jag, som sagt, tror ju att om man får göra en liten historisk tillbakablick. 1929 var det börskrasch i New York. Mycket beroende på att siffrorna kunde man inte lita på riktigt. I början på 30-talet uppstod revision som ett verktyg för att kunna lita på information på öppna marknader. Förstå vilken värdeutveckling det har varit av den transparensen och att man kan lita på den informationen. Nu tror jag att nu står vi inför ett skede där CSRD kan ha den funktionen. massor med information som ska fram. Det kanske känns jättejobbigt. Men om man har fokus på lite på en horisont där fram är det relevanta, få det reviderat av någon extern part, marknaden får reda på den informationen, så har vi en fantastisk förmåga att kunna utveckla marknaden med all den här hållbarhetsinformationen så att investerare på olika sätt kan agera på den. Så i ett långt perspektiv så tror jag att vi står inför ett fantastiskt skifte kring en tsunami av sån här information som om 5, 7, 8, 10 år, när det har mognat, kan vi som investerare agera på. Men idag så finns det ju klara datagap och då kan man ju så att säga simulera det som inte finns. Och för att prata lite mer om det här så har vi en fantastisk panel. Nu är den internationell så att vi tänkte gå över till engelska. Hoppas att det är okej med alla. Är det inte okej så vet jag inte riktigt vad jag ska göra just nu. Men då tar vi ett snack efter det här. Och jag skulle vilja välkomna upp på scen till att börja med Fran Owen. Välkommen upp på scenen. Welcome on the stage. Fran Owen is Value Creation ESG Manager at Altor. Welcome. Thanks. Big hand for Fran. We also have Ivan Gorzewski with us. Similar position at Kapman. A big hand. And last but not least, Mattias Gunnarsson, Transaction Service Partner at PwC. Fantastic team with us here. We're welcome. How are you?
Very good, well. Thanks.
Very good. Good. Yes. So, should we start talking about the history a bit? Why do you think that ESG due diligence now is a tool that is sought after in the market? Would you go, Fran, first?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think you can tell from Ivan and I's job titles that sustainability is no longer kind of sitting in this compliance risk management space. I think a lot of Ps and other investors now see the value creation and the opportunity that it brings. We have a real focus on investing in the green transition at Altor, and that represents, that's a huge investment opportunity. It requires 8 trillion euros worth of investment by 2030 for us to kind of stay on track to reach or to keep warming below 1.5 degrees. And so that requires public and private investment. So coming back to due diligence, that's really important for us when we're making the investments, that we know that what we're investing in has, say, a decarbonization objective, and that we're not investing in anything where there's not potential for us to improve the sustainability performance and, as a result, create value.
Very good.
Yep, absolutely. We're very similar in a way that historically ESG DD has been focused on risks, but now it's moving towards capturing all those opportunities. So as Altor, we're also very much interested in transitioning companies or transitioning properties that we own. So we want to make sure of knowing as much as possible of what we have. So what are the risks and potential pitfalls, but also we want to make sure that whatever we take on, we can actually improve. That's where the value creation comes in.
Yes, you are not an ESG expert, but you have a very long transaction background. What's your perspective on why has ESG suddenly become a topic on transactions?
I mean, I think part of it is a reflection of society at large too, with the focused interest, right? And I think private equity feels it through the investors, the limited partners that have requirements on the funds to be responsible in their investing. And some funds are more reactive, some are a lot more proactive. And I think it also goes hand in hand in the focus, or with the focus on thematic investing that we see. I think back in the day in private equity, you could make money by financial engineering and maybe trying to outsmart the other side. Nowadays, you have to do something with your investments. You have to drive value, and finding the societal trends and themes that drive value and latching onto those. And doing the things that are right makes sense from an investing perspective as well. So I think it's all of those bigger trends that help drive it.
Great. Have you seen sort of examples where the ESG angle unlocks new opportunities, new innovation in your deal makings historically?
I can think of examples where the DD has provided kind of both a discount on price, but also like where we've seen an opportunity and therefore kind of considered, you know, potentially offering more for the price of a company. So in one case, there was a company that made apparel, and we looked into kind of worker wages in the supply chain and realized that those were below kind of what we would deem a living wage, and kind of based on a calculation of what it would take to get from this kind of below minimum wage to a living wage, worked out that we should be offering a discount off the price. On the contrary, we have also invested in companies we feel are contributing to green transition, like H2 Green Steel, that makes steel from renewable electricity. And we really kind of, when we're doing our own kind of analysis and due diligence, we also kind of factor in a green premium towards the exit. So I think for us, it's the due diligence is a really important way of us looking at both risk but also opportunity.
Yeah, one example that I can think of is a case that we've actually exited the company now, but when the due diligence was being conducted before we got in, it was a ferry, so it's a marine transport company. So we realized that there's a huge opportunity for electrifying the fleet. It required a significant investment, of course. We did it in 2 or 3 years, and then after we exited the company, actually the multiple was quite significant. So we set up the company to be pretty much, well, future-proof, if you want to use that type of word.
Good. Is it fair to say that sustainability is sort of the next wave of sustainability value creation wave after digitalization? Is that fair to say? Sorry, that was a question off topic a bit, but is that fair to, do you hear that or?
It's a tricky one. I mean, maybe we should ask the more skeptical.
No, but we certainly see, if I look at some of my private equity funds, those are the two areas they invest in right now, for sure, right? So I think there is a thesis, there is an expectation. And I think there's a lot being done around value creation from a sustainability perspective. In my experience, we may not have seen the outcome yet so much, and you know, I think it's maybe not entirely clear always to tie the value creation efforts to outcome yet, right? But there's a lot of investment in that area, and it'll be really interesting to see where it shakes out. Yeah,
because that's where the interesting part actually comes in of quantifying those opportunities during the DD phase, to actually be able to put in the financials down to proper numbers and seeing what the value during the holding period of the company would be and how much of an exit value fund or a company can actually achieve after those opportunities are put into practice.
And that's not straightforward to do, and I think sometimes you have to just be you have to have costs or like opportunities that are indicative. You can't quantify everything. But yeah, what I've lost my trail of thought about your point. But yeah, I think yeah, it's important to note that sustainability is the kind of value proposition behind it depends on the company you're investing in. For some companies, it's super obvious what the value proposition is for sustainability, whether that depends on like sector, geography, or business model. Whereas for others, it's harder to find, and likely it is there, but you need to kind of dig a bit deeper. And that kind of the magnitude of that value creation differs. So I think the risk comes when you try and paint everything as green and sustainable, and get value out of that when actually that's not the case. You need to really be quite targeted in your DD to figure out, okay, is this actual value or is this...
And also try and quantify the cost side, right? Because some initiatives have a cost to it. And I think that's one of the things we see now, that some of our clients are starting to realize that, you know, maybe what they've said publicly around their initiatives has some cost to it. And it's, I think that's part of the effort, quantifying that and quantifying the upside.
What we've seen so far is actually a little bit easier to quantify the costs as opposed to quantifying the value.
I could definitely see that.
Yeah, agree.
If we dig into a bit deeper as of now, what do you think, what are you looking for as in a DD phase as an investor? What would you say is the sort of the lens that you're how would you describe the lens?
It's probably similar to your approach, where we first want to identify what the material sustainability topics are. Of course, we expect a company to kind of at least operate at a minimum kind of license to operate level across all sustainability topics, but I think the real like risks and values occur where those material topics are, both from a kind of impact materiality lens and also a financial materiality lens. And then we would dig kind of deeper into those, say, 5 or 6 topics which we really feel are material, rather than trying to kind of cover everything. We would then be looking to see how the company is performing compared to its peers, as well as industry standards, so we get a good sense of where the risks and opportunities lie. Where possible, we would like that to be kind of quantified in terms of costs or potential kind of benefits. And then also it's really important for us to then have a roadmap or some sort of timeline of actions of, okay, this is what you need to put into the 100-day plan, this is what you put into the 3-year plan, and we try and integrate that into the overall value creation plan so it doesn't get lost. But I find the DD is a really good report that I'll often take to our new portfolio companies, maybe kind of tone down the language a bit and then and use it as a starting point to engage in a conversation. And that's super helpful to know like kind of what skeletons you have in the closet and what are your opportunities, so you really know what you're going into. And that's what's really valuable about the DD.
What are you looking for? Sorry.
No, I was going to say, I mean, you kind of touched on how the ESG part has to be integrated into the rest, right, into the value creation plan. And I think if we go back a couple of years, it maybe lived its own life a little bit outside of some of the other work streams, some of the other opportunities. But I think more and more, it's an integral part of the value creation plan, of the company's business plan, and the broader strategic operational diligence, right? And I think there's been a lot of progress in those areas in recent years.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's how we've actually structured our approach as well. So we've done an onboarding and holding guidelines that start with the pre-investment phase, and they are based on the due diligence. So we have a due diligence and value creation tool, which is deployed in that pre-investment phase, which of course, based on materiality, exactly as Fran said. So it's looking at it from a risk perspective, but then we need the investment team to actually help us determine where the value levers are. Based on that, then we can actually sit down and work with the company itself to integrate whatever the ESG risks and opportunities are and to integrate them into the business plan.
Great. Have you seen examples where the ESG DD has, or how does it influence the decision-making process, sort of in the investment committee? What's your sort of take on that? What happens with that report in the investment committee meeting?
I suppose if the DD identifies an economic activity that's on our exclusion list, then that's an easy automatic. We're not going to invest in it. Otherwise, again, it sounds similar to your approach. We have kind of ESG templates that need to go into the IC material, and our deal teams know that they need to complete that assessment, and then I will review it with them before it goes to IC, so they know kind of which risks and opportunities to highlight. I have sat in, I won't attend every IC, but I will sit in the IC meetings where I feel like we really want to highlight a particular risk or opportunity. And again, I think it just varies on the case. I don't think, as long as we can see a plan to remediate, or there's a feasible plan for us to kind of close a gap or realize an opportunity, I don't think sustainability on its own would be a reason to decline a deal. I think it would kind of be in combination with other things. So for us, it's not like we wouldn't invest in a company where we see a risk unless it's on the exclusion list. We would make sure that there's a plan in place for us to close that gap, because that's part of our active ownership, is like we have influence. We're often a majority shareholder. We often have board seats. If anything, we can do more by being in that company than pulling back.
Very, very similar. We sit on the investment committee. We have the templates. Unless it's the worst offenders that are on the restriction list, then the sustainability, I mean, it's automatic no. But then exactly, we weigh the risks that we can take on and that we're ready to take on. And exactly as you said, even if the company is not doing very well right now, but if there is potential, then we take that into consideration as well.
Matthias, have you experienced any sort of, your clients, how they are thinking about these ESG as is that an integral part when you're discussing closing M&A deals that you're part of? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a trend, right, where, and I think I alluded to it, used to be a bit of a sidetrack, whereas now I think sustainability with some of the clients I work with is an integral part of how they look at transactions. So some of them have, with that lens, opted out of a number of industries, so they're quite narrow in terms of what industries they invest in. So I think that's the first way to, try and find the right areas that feel are on strategy for them. So I think it's an evolving path. Some I think are still quite open, but there are probably targets within a broad range of sectors that they would exclude. So I'm actually a little curious to hear about when you talk about restriction lists, exclusion lists, what ends up there.
I think it's the classic kind of oil and gas, military equipment, tobacco, those kind of areas where we have a kind of policy of like absolutely no direct exposure, and then indirect exposure is a case-by-case basis. And then, of course, there are some kind of grey areas between those where we then need to have discussions with the deal teams and investment committees. And I think, as we were having conversation about this earlier, that instead of having a very, very prescriptive exclusion list where the deal teams don't, they can just check and say, okay, well, we're definitely not investing in that, switch brain off, move on. I think it's good that we actually encourage debate around these grey areas and kind of get the deal teams involved in the discussion as, okay, would this be a good investment or not from a sustainability perspective, rather than us just telling them what to do. Like, we want to engage them as much as we can.
Yeah, it's a very similar to Altor. We've also added one area, so it's more on the norms-based side, where we try to where we don't engage or we don't acquire companies that have verified breaches of international norms and that haven't remediated them. So the focus here is on the remediation, because of course any company can breach any type of standard or expectation or initiative, but then if they don't remediate it, then it's a problem. So we've added those two, and of course the big no-nos, I mean, controversial weapons, and then we also have some revenue thresholds for some industries where direct exposure can be zero revenue, but then for services and for related services and for distribution, we can be okay with it up to a certain threshold.
Yeah.
All right, very good. So talking about the future a bit, how the development of these topics we think can develop. So considering the evolving regulatory environment that is very fast and there's a lot of things coming on, how would you sort of foresee the shape and the practices of the ESG DDs going forward next years?
I think the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive is I know it's a lot of work, but it's great in terms of, I really hope it improves data quality and comparability. I think that's one of the biggest challenges with DD right now, is that it's very difficult to obtain the data from the target company, and then it's very difficult to compare to peers, because you can look at emissions, try and compare emissions intensity or turnover rate, but everyone's measuring it differently or doesn't have, it's not assured, so you don't know if it's accurately measured. So I'm really hoping that CSRD irons out some of those issues. And yeah, I think taxonomy too is also another thing that we'll start to look into more, in terms of, when companies say they are sustainable, then we can actually check, okay, well, are you aligned to the taxonomy? Like, does that hold true, or is this venturing into the greenwashing space.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing that I just wanted to add is that traditionally the due diligence is mostly focused on the environmental side or the governance side because there has been data there. But one trend that we see coming up is also focused on social, especially on human rights within the supply chain. The EU taxonomy has kindly introduced the concept of minimum social safeguards with the human rights due diligence as part of the company's eligibility, well, alignment with the EU taxonomy. So with the oncoming CSRD and the CSDDD, I think this is going to be a big area in the next couple of years.
How do you foresee the development of ESG going forward?
And interesting to pick up on what you said on the social, the S of ESG. Having spent most of my career in the US, I would say generally they're probably a bit behind Europe in this, in general on ESG, maybe on the S side. That has been a focus area a while in the US, just given the history there. But it feels like Europe is catching up, right? And I think the US is also looking at Europe a lot around ESG in general. And I see a lot of investment with US funds, bringing over experts from Europe, from European private equity funds, and trying to catch up. So I see a little bit of harmonization in the trends between Europe and the US, but I'd say Europe is still ahead.
Yeah, there's also some industry-specific initiatives like the EDCI. It's the Data Convergence Initiative that LPs and GPs have signed up to, and we collectively report, I think it's 6 ESG metrics annually, and then you can compare your portfolio company performance against this industry benchmark, which has been incredibly helpful. And I mean, there's plenty more indicators we could choose, and it's kind of early days, but I think for us that gives that benchmark as a really good tool to start talking to portfolio companies that are either above the benchmark to kind of understand what their good practices are and share that with the rest of the portfolio companies, or the ones that are below to say, okay, like this is the benchmark, and how can we get you up to at least the average.
So it seems like it's definitely something that will mature, it develop, sort of industry standards will be developed, etc. So when we're sitting here 2030, possibly a bit more gray-haired, what sustainability topics will we talk about then?
That's a good question.
In a transaction perspective.
Yeah.
Is it fully integrated? Is it fully commercial?
I hope it's fully integrated. I think I can see sustainability due diligence being integrated more and more into the commercial due diligence, where the business model is, there's a really strong focus on sustainability, and that is a core value lever. I don't think it fits in all cases. I think it's only where the sustainability is at the core that it makes sense to integrate it into commercial DD. I think climate is topic of the day right now. So we've set a target for all of our portfolio companies to have approved science-based targets by the end of 24. So for us, that's a really key issue right now. But after 24, I'm sure we'll find another issue to
zero.
To focus on. I see nature rising up the agenda as a big topic, and of course some of the social topics.
Yeah, absolutely. You just touched upon the nature part, and it's become a very big deal, or it will become even a bigger deal. Right now, as we keep on coming back, the data is quite difficult to obtain and to quantify. The task force on nature-related financial disclosures is working on improving those. The science-based targets for nature are halfway there. So it's going to be, by 2030, I think we'll have much more knowledge on quantifying all those risks and opportunities from climate, from nature overall, and from the social side as well.
What do you foresee?
No, I think what I hear makes sense, right? I'm not sure I have so much to add, but I can see the strategic and the softer part of ESG, if you will, being intertwined, and maybe that is just an integral part of the business diligence, if you will. But then once we get more data to measure, then you have the more hard part that may, be a separate work stream that still continues.
Yeah. And we've noticed that at least the investment teams that we have, they're very well aware of the importance. Sometimes they don't know how to interpret it, so they need our help there. But compared to a couple of years back, the difference is vast.
Very good. Any more final comments before we open up for questions to the audience here? No? You're good?
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. Lisa, do you want to enter the stage as well?
Yes,
Yeah.
I have great questions from the audience here. I almost felt like pulling up this chair and join you.
Yeah,
Please
Can I do that?
absolutely.
Sit. I don't know if this is allowed. I'm doing it anyway. Great, good discussions. And we have one a little bit funny one, I think, is from the language nerd saying sustainability manager versus sustainability value creation manager. Is the latter indirectly enforcing the view that sustainability does not create value?
That's a great question. So for context at Altor, I sit in a wider value creation team, which is made up of specialists across procurement, finance, HR strategy, and now sustainability. So some of us, like a lot of us have value creation in our title because we're part of that team. But yeah, I think it is a nice, I mean, it's a mouthful to say, but I think it's a good signal that we take it not only from the risk perspective, but also as an opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't have a value creation team. So actually the sustainability managers, the two of us that have the title of value creation, is more to signal the fact that in the past 2 or 3 years, we've actually established a very robust ESG governance structures and processes and procedures in place. So what we want to signal to our LPs and to our customers is to actually, we are in implementation phase for the next year or two. So what we want to see now, or what we want to signal, is that now it's the time to actually create value. So with all the work that we've done in the past.
Good, great, thanks. And then another question. You did mention ESG opportunities in quite broad terms, and then you mentioned social for a bit with human rights and so on. But would you have another example for a social opportunity? I assume the human rights is more on the risk side.
Get your workforce to be happy. It's much more productive. Happy workers equals higher value companies or a better culture to work in. And then there's also the fact that companies need to reflect, or boards and management teams need to reflect the societies that they operate in. And quite a lot of time they actually, let's just say they're still a little bit behind.
And just having diversity in thought in the leadership team and the boards, you know, will, I think, drive value in itself by making stronger companies. So,
you agree, Fran, or any additional comments?
Yeah, no, just to add, it's been kind of well documented, or there's been a lot of reports showing that diverse teams do bring diverse thought and kind of make people feel more included in their workplace.
Good. Another question that just came in here. I guess we might be a supplier here, but do you manage due diligence internally, or do you use third-party experts? And if so, how hands-on are you? Sorry, it hopped away here. Sorry, I lost the question. It disappeared. How hands-on are you in setting the scope for the ESG due diligence? I think that was it.
So for our first investment committee meeting, we will do the sustainability assessment internally. So that will be done by the deal team, and I'll work with them. For the second investment committee meeting, it's a requirement to get a third-party sustainability consulting house in to run the DD and make sure we do it properly. And I'm quite involved in, I mean, we have a scoping document which kind of outlines the basic requirements, and then I'll be working with the deal team and the consultant to make sure we tailor it to that specific project.
Yeah, we've done a combination of both, basically, depending on the complexity of the organization or of the property, because we have a significant real estate portfolio. We do have a scoping document. We have our own ESG investment policy, which lists out all the factors and all the standards that we need to look into. That's connected to the scoping document, and we're very much involved during the ESG DD phase. Even, I mean, even if we're not doing it directly. So if an external party is doing it, we're still very much hands-on during that.
And I was going to say, we see all versions among our clients. So some of the bigger ones have big sustainability teams in-house. There are those that have maybe 20 people. And then you come down to mid-market, smaller funds and corporate clients that may not have anyone, right, focused on deals. So I think just the strength of the in-house team will dictate to some degree how much outside help you use. But there's a variety right now. There's a variety in maturity, I would say.
Good. Another question here is it common with both buy-side and sell-side ESG due diligence? And if sell-side is common, is there risk for greenwashing?
We do both buy-side and sell-side due diligence. Ideally, I'm working with deal teams and portfolio companies a couple years prior to exit, so that when you get to exit stage, you're not kind of uncovering gaps, or you're not quickly trying to fix things like the engagement has happened earlier. Of course, that doesn't always happen. In terms of a greenwashing point, I think that's when actually bringing a third party in adds credibility, because then, and we always say to them, like, please make your reports objective. Like, you will probably get pushback from portfolio company, or even us will challenge points, but ultimately the report needs to be objective. And I think too, to hold us to account, like, you know that the buyer is likely doing their own DD, so there's just nothing to be gained in kind of spinning something a different way, because they will do their DD and it will likely get found out.
We have a very similar approach, and I mean, one of our goals is transparent and accountable. So yeah, whatever we have, everything's available for the sell side, of course. And as Fran said, they're welcome to do their own due diligence. And whenever we do the sell side one, we do want to be challenged. So it's always a welcome opportunity to actually figure out the important bits and pieces.
Sounds like that's a comforting answer to whoever asked that question. Very good. I think we have time for maybe one more question. I think you touched upon this one, but maybe a little bit more. Are you open about what's on your exclusion and restriction list? You mentioned sort of gray zones and so on, but you have a statement.
Yep. Yeah, it's on our website.
Yeah.
And it's updated annually to account for developments. I mean, right now we're doing a human rights salient risk mapping across the organization, and we're in the process of updating our restriction lists to include potential aspects from a human rights perspective that might not have been as explicitly stated in the past as they have. So it'll be out before the end of the year. But we have the current one is out there.
Yeah, ours is also available on the website.
Let's see.
One thing to add here is
Sure.
that there might be some fund-specific restrictions, and those are part of the PPM, and those are internal. I mean, those are confidential.
Yeah. How much do you talk to a company you are about to invest in about sustainability and the sustainability roadmap you would implement before investing?
Depends on the process. If it's an auction, then we do get the limited time with management, so we try to maximize our exposure. I mean, it's in our own interest. I mean, just speaking from a sustainability point of view. So that's when we try to get as much information as possible. Because if not, I mean, if we manage to get more time with management, then of course we're always eager to get as much information as possible.
Yeah, we will try and get as much access to management as we can. In terms of a roadmap, that's probably something we would share after the investment, rather than like pre-acquisition. But again, it would depend. Depends how kind of transformative those changes would be.
Yeah, of course. Great. David, do you have any additional questions now based on these ones here?
No, not really. I mean, I think in a bigger perspective, I think Matthias can sign on that. That's, it's been a fantastic development last years, and this interest and the ability to actually look at. I mean, I'm totally aware that these are not sort of perfect information flows sometimes, but at least there is so much more being looked at, and there's so many, often more times, value creation in the angle of everything. And obviously, with the foresight of CSRD coming, that can be really, I think, expanding the analysis and the firmness of these topics. So I'm very happy that you guys are very active in this. Yeah. And I guess, sort of it seems like you're the theme of there's a lot of opportunities by buying brown companies and transforming them, future-proofing, transforming them into the green companies. And it's a fantastic opportunity, I guess.
Yeah, look, private equity has had quite a negative connotation based on the excess of the 1980s, but it's a whole different world right now.
Very good, and thank you for coming. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.